agenda, our extensive agenda. All right, welcome everyone to the Planning and Zoning Work Meeting. The date is August 19th. We are starting at 5:34. In attendance are Claudia Anderson, myself, Darlene Pope, Lee Ballard, and Kent Peterson. Our first, just reverse those numbers on my notes. Our first item tonight is an ordinance amending and restating Virgin Municipal Code 16.2.30 and 16.2.32 to establish procedures for zoning text amendments and zoning map amendments and providing for related matters. And Riker, would you like to start with this?
Yeah, so this item was on the regular meeting earlier this month. Public hearing was held. If I recall correctly, there were no public comments on this. Well, there was one public comment asking for clarification on what the ordinance did.
Yes.
And then, so just to further clarify, what this ordinance does is it outlines the process and the application requirements for both a zone change or a text amendment. Currently in the code, those two processes are somewhat combined and a little bit vague. And so the intent of this ordinance is to clarify that, provide actual application requirements so that it's clear to the public and to staff what the process is, what's required at the time of application. In addition to that, state code does require that we have checklists online for all of our land use applications. And those checklists have to be backed up by code. And so that's another reason for bringing this ordinance before you. So,
All right. And did everyone have a chance to review it?
Mm-hmm.
And who would like to start with questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. I feel like we've talked about it and I feel really comfortable with it. So
I'm completely comfortable with it.
agree.
Agreed. Let me just check my notes. I just had a few, I would call them points of clarification. Would zone changes still, since they're land use, it would still go through planning and zoning, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So a public hearing still required. Those things are all still in there as according to state code. The main thing that we've done here is separate it from the text amendment process, which also requires a public hearing.
Then on line 96, the town council determined that the commission has had adequate time to consider. It's awfully vague. Do we have an idea of what that time is? And two, what if that delay is because we've want it to be reviewed by our town attorney and we haven't heard that?
So that determination would be made by the town council. That language mirrors state code. That's a new provision in state code. The town council has that authority to do that. That's the reason for the absence of any specified timeline here. They would need to make that determination. I'm sure that if the delay was because of because the commission required an opinion from the attorney, that the town council would take that under advisement. But
Because we do have a time frame ordinance.
correct, and state code doesn't require that an exact time frame be placed in there.
But-
However, if the commission would like one put in there, then we can do that, and then the council can decide if they
Or
want to
just
keep that. Or
reference our current one.
yeah, I mean we can do that. I think that it should be referenced in the actual approval process of this ordinance, and so my suggestion would be that if the commission would like a specific time frame in there, the direction be given on that. I can include that in the ordinance before it goes to council, and then they can determine if they want to keep that or not.
Okay.
We might have to wait for case law to find out what
Yeah.
the limits actually are.
Yeah, but I would like it if we could abide by what the commission and the council have both agreed to and was passed and
Sure,
put
I'm
into
sure
our
we will.
code. I don't know how we would do that.
So do you want me to just include in that area, I'll just match the same time frame?
That's my preference. I don't know about anyone else.
I wouldn't mind if it was referenced. I don't know if it should replace the language that's there.
Okay.
What does everybody else think?
Well, you know what, how I
agree.
think.
I feel like it could be 1, 2, 3. So that at least it's referenced that we have a code on it, and then 3 would be town council, because if there's something that falls outside of it or is something really weird, then I think they should have the ability to take some time and to figure out what they do next.
Yeah.
I'll work that into that section there then.
And then, I'm sorry, I have so many questions. In general, this is fine. On line 188-ish, the owner may file a written objection no later than 10 days after the first public hearing and identify where to file it. Just so we're clear, that might trigger any rezone to being the following month. You know, sent to council, because we couldn't, I don't know, maybe I just need to understand that process better. That might not be a problem at all.
But,
Which line was that?
188.
it then tells you what we do in response to an objection. So,
Yeah, I just don't want, and if we had the standard that we've already agreed upon with town council, that's in our ordinance, this would not be a problem.
right.
And then my last one is on line 206, number 1. And it's just, I need clarification. It says the applicant has made a written request under Utah code for final action within 45 days.
So Utah code provides for allows for the applicant to request a decision be made within 45 days. They can provide a written request. So that's
45 days of what?
so state code does not clarify if that is calendar or business.
Yeah,
Days.
because public hearing wouldn't necessarily be a problem.
Yeah, and so noticing is typically calendar days.
And then but it could be a problem because if they submit it the day after we have
So-
to submit our public hearing
So
items.
it's not from when they submit the application. So the statute's a little more clear than that. It's if action has not happened. So an application's been submitted, it's been deliberated on, and that deliberation has taken a period of time. I'm not sure exactly what that is. And then the applicant submits a petition for a decision to be made within 45 days.
So it's
That-
not from the date that the application was deemed complete?
Correct. This is a separate submittal.
A whole different thing?
This is
Okay.
a separate request for decision. It's not the application submittal.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's all my questions. Anyone else?
Yes, I want to go back to the first question, or the
Okay.
previous question you asked.
Line?
Back to 188.
Okay.
So the owner can file an objection, the owner of a piece of property affected by the rezone, 10 days after the first public hearing. And then,
Makes no sense.
so the application is on its way from the planning commission to the town council possibly. And then it has to be taken back because the planning and zoning has to consider all those written objections,
Also,
right?
we have not made a decision 10 days after the public hearing.
Well, it's possible we might decide to at some point.
That is not our practice.
It's not our current practice, no. But there are emergencies or
But
45-day
but it's
requests. or-
the exception, not the rule. And it seems like the ordinance should be written for the rule.
So the 10-day requirement or allowance for written submittal is in state code. So with a map amendment, we have to allow for up to 10 days for someone to submit written objection to
But-
said
And that's
application.
from the public hearing and not the decision.
Correct.
Yeah.
Does not make
And
sense.
then the planning commission has to consider those objections, which would very likely be past the work meeting. So anyway, it's kind of,
And I'll verify that, but I believe that decision cannot take place prior to that 10-day period.
okay.
I'll verify that, but I
So,
believe state code
I
stipulates
guess
that as well.
my point of confusion is how can they to object to something that's not been decided?
So in the same way that somebody would state their opinion objecting to an application in a public hearing, it's the equivalent, but it's written comment instead of spoken comment.
But it's their submittal. So they
So
would be.
it's any property owner affected
oh,
by the
any
zone change.
property
So,
owner.
so it's not the applicant.
Well, it
This is
just-
not an appeal, I should
it
say.
doesn't
It-
say that. It says the owner. Oh, but it is under that real properties. Thank you.
Each owner of real property.
Back it up, Hope. Yeah,
Back it up to here.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Is that your last point of clarification?
Yeah, I'm still a little confused by it. I'm not confused, but I'm noticing that it is going to definitely make the whole process take longer, at least another month.
Yeah, makes more sense though if it's a nearby, an affected property owner who makes the objection.
Well, of course, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
They
makes
could
sense.
wait until the 10th day and slow down the process by a month. That's all.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Riker, for your patience,
Yeah,
as
sorry.
always. All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll move on to our second item, which is an ordinance amending chapter 16.8 of the Virgin Municipal Code, 16.2 I apologize, VMC, by adding a definition of accessory structure to VMC 16.2.12 and by adding 16.8.60 accessory structures, establishing standards for the construction, placement, size, and use of accessory structures in all zoning districts and providing for related matters. Now, commissioners, just so you can compare the two, in your folder, you have the proposed amended version. And I included, when you walked in, the first version. So I had 3 items there. So that we can see the differences a little more clearly.
Got mine all mixed up.
Does anyone in particular want to start this discussion?
If it's still there, on line, which, 185,
185? On the new version?
I assume.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it is.
no, it's not there.
That's prohibited uses section.
Yeah,
Do you want to see what it is? in
it's
there?
been corrected. There was just an and where it didn't belong.
Okay,
There was an and then nothing came after it. And it used to be on line 186, so I assume it's been.
I don't
fixed.
see an and there on the original.
No.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
When I read, record, just making sure I understand it, sorry. So in your discussion items, you said orders considered but not carried forward, blah, blah, blah. Staff seeks commission's direction on the mechanism on the 50 and 15% figures. Do you mind adding a little bit about that?
That's in,
I believe this was in relation to the square footage or potential square footage requirements on size and coverage for accessory structures in the commercial and highway resort zone. So that was one of the things the commission wanted additional options on. The staff report kind of details potential alternatives. What's included in here in the draft ordinance is just a percentage requirement. And then the percentages that are there are placeholders. If the commission would like to suggest an alteration to those percentages, then that's what staff is seeking direction on, is if that's the method that the commission would prefer, and if those percentages are what the commission would prefer.
So it lists maximum structure size in residential as 75% of the floor area of the main building. And I thought we had talked about 50, but
yeah,
maybe I,
no accessory structure could exceed 50% of the main building.
So I may be getting confused, but it was my understanding that the 50% requirement was intended for commercial. The 75% requirement was carried over from the previous draft, but we can change that percentage. So
Okay, my understanding was as follows, because very often being in a more rural area, there's more than one accessory structure, that no individual accessory structure could exceed 50%. And combined, all accessory structures could not exceed 75% of the main dwelling.
okay, so that's not the way that it's currently written would allow for 75% of the main dwelling for an individual structure. And again, all these percentages can be changed. And then the combined footprint is based on the lot size, not on the main building size. So the combined footprint of the accessory structures would be 10% of the lot coverage of the lot size. The way that it's currently written in here.
But,
So that's on line 167.
well, 160 or 170, the floor area of an accessory structure shall not exceed 75% of the floor area of the
Right.
main dwelling.
Right, so that would be for each individual one. If we want to reduce that to 50%, that's doable.
And the combined building footprint of all accessory structures shall not exceed 10% of the total lot area. And we had talked about making it larger for agricultural zones is what I recall.
rural residential, you might want a barn.
So
But
I know some people who built barns under the old one and they were limited to 50%.
So yeah, so that's something the commission will want to consider, is how this affects agricultural uses.
can, I don't see how we could have a specific.
And can we, do you recall what the previous standard was?
I'm confused by it because I've researched it and found different things on different years. And so I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah. So that item for discussion, let's dig into this.
Well, I don't think we need to know what it used to say so much as we need to decide if that's the right approach. And I'm getting the feeling, maybe I'm wrong, that you think there's a better way to approach building size?
So I think tying the individual size to the main dwelling is appropriate. We would want to consider specifically those agricultural uses, especially in rural residential zones. where somebody may put a barn or something to that effect on their property, especially if they have a larger parcel of property. We may want to provide some sort of carve out for agricultural uses
Yeah.
in that way. We certainly don't want to unnecessarily restrict those.
No.
And as far as the total lot area, again, that seems appropriate in my opinion. As far as keeping the total floor area of the accessory structures proportionate to the lot size.
And possibly considering the fact that we're going to stay at minimum lot size for a residence to be an acre. So that would make for if we went too much higher than 10%, that could make for some pretty.
Well, 10% of course would be 4,300.
And something to keep in mind is that while this particular standard is governing the individual and collective sizes of the accessory structures, property owners will still have to comply with the setback requirements and work within the buildable envelope. And so there will be those constraints placed on structures as well as they come in.
My worry about that is that if we were to limit it only by area of the lot, a large lot owner could put a really large building right on the street at the setback, and it wouldn't match the area around them. In other words, I think if you're going to allow, say somebody has 2 acres instead of anyway, if I put an accessory building, my maximum size for an accessory building on my lot would be 1,800 square feet. Is that right? Yeah.
3/4 acre,
No,
half,
I'm 2 acres.
that would be 8,700 feet,
Okay.
which is
Okay,
bigger than all
anyway.
houses.
Right. And if you're in farm country, there's always a barn or, a tractor, whatever, big buildings,
This is in residential
buildings
zones
then.
though. This is residential.
homes. Correct.
And
But
that,
for years and maybe not any longer, our agricultural zone didn't allow homes. And of course, if you have a farm, you may want to have your home on the same property.
yes, and it says accessory structures in the agriculture and open space zone shall comply with the development standards of the applicable zone.
Have what?
Read F on line 198.
But just as a point of clarification, this would apply to the rural residential zone,
Correct.
which specifically calls out its purpose as for farming
Yes.
and for agricultural uses. And so that is something that I would advise the commission to consider as far as how this may affect agricultural uses in that zone.
I think we should be concerned about that. And I think that if we do end up allowing some percentage larger, that we may consider adjusting the setbacks if it gets over a certain size.
So let me help me understand, Lee. So like 10% of an acre is 4,356 feet.
Right.
That is bigger than almost every house in
It's
my
bigger than the
neighborhood.
biggest house allowed now.
And that was the whole point, that some residents and in the past, even in residential area of Old Town, that was 50%. They
Right.
were, and they have, and I know of agricultural uses made under that. That's a huge structure.
Yeah, I agree. But yes, I think we need to consider how big a barn somebody with a farm in rural residential would want. And
Do
I'm
we
not
have
talking about your,
Yeah, but They would
They-
probably have more than 1 acre if they had agricultural, and that's kind of a different
That's why they
scenario.
should be allowed a bigger,
The main thing that I would advise the commission to consider is the 75% floor area of the main dwelling requirement when it comes to barns or agricultural uses. That there be some exception there or some carve out there for agricultural uses specifically for that requirement, not necessarily altering the 10% of the lot area requirement.
I like
Um,
that.
For every other use, for every other accessory structure, they would still be required to be no larger individually, no larger than 75% of the main dwelling or whatever
Or-
percentage the commission opts to choose there.
Trying to see what we had in our original version.
What do we all think about that, allowing some kind of exception for an agricultural building in rural residential only?
I need to verify, but I don't believe
Lots
that.
over X amount.
Well, so we have, that was my point, and thank you for under 1D line 150, adding that exception in, because that would
What,
affect a lot
what
of
line
people in
number?
our neighborhood. Huh?
What line number?
150, so it's location.
Ah,
that we
okay.
added in the exception, where our house is at the back of the lot and the back of the room. So,
Ah,
so I think the 75%. So let me just say this in Claudia English, sorry. If I have my house at the back of my 3 acre lot and I want to put up my accessory buildings, I can build up to that 10%. So I can have all those buildings up there. As long as they're not, none of those individual buildings are more than 75% of my house. Did I say
Correct.
that?
Correct. So individually, the structures could not be larger than 75% of your home's floor area, and collectively, they could not be larger than 10% of your lot area.
So, but I could still put a whole bunch of buildings out,
yes,
really in my mind.
yes.
So.
As long as you could work that into your building envelope and meet your setbacks. Because that will also apply.
Like,
But the,
6 feet this way and from there. and like that.
yes, and so there are, I believe there's separation requirements in the ordinance, as well. And so those would need to be looked at, if there were multiple accessory structures. The other side of that is that, I mean, the intent here is if somebody wanted to place a shed on their property, but also wanted to place, a garage on their property to park their cars, that they could do that and they could have both accessory structures. That's kind of the intent behind it, is not to overly restrict.
Did you? Oh, sorry. I asked you, I think last time we talked about this, about the 6 feet, because I'd been hearing years ago that the fire department wants buildings to be further apart than that in order for people to escape, for fire engines to get in, all that kind of thing. And I wondered if you'd confirmed that that was a good number.
I had not confirmed that. Thank
Okay.
you for bringing that back up. I'll reach out to the fire district and confirm, or have them give comment on the 6 foot separation.
Okay, thank you. Should we worry about the fact that, under the exception that Claudia was just talking about, that somebody could deliberately build their house on the back line and then fill their front yard with 3/4 of the house size buildings? I mean, is that something to worry about? I don't. I mean, my neighbor did it. Maybe my neighbor has done it. Anyway. Um, um, yeah, I don't know. Is that a problem in a, yeah.
Kent, do you have any thoughts to add on this topic?
No, I haven't had a chance to read through this, but what I'm reading while I'm here, it, this is a really difficult subject because, we're trying to tell people what they can and can't do on their property. And I get really bugged. I get really bugged by and feel bad for people that don't want to respect how what they do on their property affects their neighbors. And so I don't want to make a lot of comments about it other than that. And I apologize that I haven't had a chance to read this, but I'm glad we are approaching it.
So it seems like the 10%, 75% is what was in the original, all the original versions that I can find.
Okay. And we like that. That we
Yeah, I
decided.
think you have to compromise at some point. But that's all accessory structure at 75%. Or
Correct, yeah.
individual.
That's
So the
individual.
75% is individual structures have to be, would be no greater than 75% of the main structure. And then collectively, they could be no greater than 10% of the lot.
Okay. Any other comments on that item?
No, I had read through the prohibited uses and that kind of gave me a little bit more comfort on stuff, because I agree with you, I wanna have a shed to put all my toys, and I wanna have a garage to put my 12 cars. Especially my Lamborghini. Then yeah.
Riker, can you tell me your thinking behind changing the design standards from the first to the second version? Because there's quite a drastic difference. And Utah code does allow for design standards on accessory structures.
Yeah, so there was some request for additional clarification on those design standards. In
That
the,
from a resident?
that was in the,
Public hearing.
in
Public
the,
hearing?
yeah, the previous direction received. That was one of the comments that I had on that section. So I took that and clarified it a little bit. If the commission would like to see some of those previous design standards reintroduced or alternate ones introduced.
But my concern
can do
is
that.
what you wrote is basically no design standards because it's recommended or suggested. So why have a design standard that is just a suggestion? That's not a design standard. Encouraged.
Correct. So those colors from the previous language had similar language. It said that, oh no, it did have shall be neutral earth tone or complementary to the main building.
It says
And
they
then-
shall be compatible with those used on the main building. Compatible, maybe an explanation of compatible would be enough of a clarification. Because this allows a purple, an orange,
Right. I mean,
chartreuse next to earth tones. I'm not comfortable with that.
So, I mean, it does state that exterior finishes shall not be highly reflective, fluorescent, or of an intensely bright color that is out of character with the surrounding area.
So,
And so I do think that that would speak to that specific concern, but
It's right.
it's the second sentence in that paragraph of design standards.
encouraged, not shall.
No, no, no. Yeah, read the sentence after.
Yes.
Um, I'm okay to leave it pretty loose, except if these buildings are not in the rear yard or the side yard, if they're going to be facing the street, I think maybe they should be a little stricter than this. Can we carve something out like that?
We can I mean, the town can certainly include a requirement like that. Um,
Probably in the section that talks about that exception to location.
D1D.
yeah, we could do that.
Does that make sense? to
I
you
like
guys?
the original personally.
Oh,
I don't,
Did people feel like the original was too tight? Is that? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
If I recall correctly, there were comments about,
Yeah.
we're not an HOA, but but Utah code does allow for design standards on accessory structures. So we're not
correct.
out of our purview. It is not an HOA. We're doing what state
The
code wants.
commission just needs to decide how restrictive they would like to be with such structures.
Compatible on the first of the original one on 166.
well, how do you define that, though? That's going to be difficult.
But that's the only thing. But I'd prefer that than our suggested.
So.
We're encouraged.
When
Be-
5A on line 165, 5A is the materials, the structure will be compatible. And then B, I think B is where they were not happy with that. Shall have pitched roof, blah, 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 it talks about that. Kind of remember that.
That's,
And I'd have to go back to my notes. I should have done that. I apologize.
it's part of compatibility.
Yeah.
It says,
So then at the end of the new one, where we wrote the section, shall it be construed to require an accessory structure to match the architectural style, materials, or roof form of the main building or any neighboring structure. So I remember people having a concern that it would be too expensive to put in something that was going to be completely compatible. So I think they wanted the ability to put them.
well, that would be match, not compatible.
I understand, but I think that's, yeah.
I just know in our recent past, Riker, when the word encouraged is used, it's never done.
Used against us.
That's my concern.
So would the commission prefer that we revert back to
Well,
the?
I'm one member of the commission.
I like converting it back to the original A and C. Because I feel like if somebody. No, I don't want to say this out loud because I haven't thought through it yet. But I really like A and C of the first one, and I'm not sure how to think through. They're construed that it has to match the architectural type. Because a lot of people don't want warehouse looking things in their neighborhood. So I feel like it's fair to match the neighborhood, whether you have an HOA or not.
Or be compatible,
Thank you. That's
like color, like I think it was Mark pointed out one time, if you're have several acres
Mhm.
and you want a barn, it's probably going to be wood and or metal. But
Yeah.
as long as it's
Probably be
compatible
metal.
color, and that's
Right.
where I am for the roof line as well. that's what compatible. It doesn't mean it has to.
Yeah, I love the word compatible. I feel like that's what we're looking for. I feel like we need people to feel like they need to put up a, you know,
What-
monument.
What,
I need to understand more about the problem with the similar roof.
I agree, that makes it difficult for people to do various kinds of buildings.
Okay.
Mhm. So like we have a pitched roof. And if I put a barn on my property, I wouldn't pitch the roof, I'd put a flat roof, but and would that be an exception? So I'm just thinking out loud about what it would look like, so.
Well, and the pre-manufactured sheds and things, they all have mansard roofs, or most of them do. And very few homes have that. So I don't know, it's just difficult to imagine what kind of hoops you might have to jump through to get that to work on whatever accessory building you want to
Yeah,
build.
that's what that B does.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. So tell me if I understand this correctly, Claudia, you prefer the original A and C? I can be in consensus with that. Lee, what is your preference?
What page line you on?
On the one I
old
gave you,
version?
it's 165. And
That Darlene
gave
gave you on your. That she was.
It says first version on it. No,
That's not it. That's the
Not it.
new one.
that's the new one.
On the right. Or no, that's.
Here, I can just show it to you, right? We're talking about the design standard section.
Well, they're doing that. As I was reading state code, I noticed it said if it's under 200 square foot, it doesn't require building permit. And I just wondered, is that just assumed or should that be part of the code?
So yeah, that'd be governed by building code and state code. And so we would just defer to those two codes. We wouldn't need the state.
Plumbing or electrical in it, then you have to have a building permit anyway.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
And-
And so
and-
we're covered on that. I just
Yeah. And
wanted to
again,
make
we-
sure that we were clear on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
where we have adopted the building code, I mean, we'll just follow that process. And so that would
Yeah,
dictate.
but that is useful information for me because I have had residents speak to me about it. They've got so many little sheds on their, and that, if I had had that at my fingertips, I could have said, well, there was no,
That's-
they
That's
don't
fine.
need a building code
Correct. You don't need a
per
permit.
state, right?
No.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of that question. I haven't gotten an answer, a sense of where Lee and Kent is, so while they're thinking. On the definition,
Find it?
do we specifically need to mention sheds and or containers? You know what I mean by containers? Like reused railroad containers, truck containers?
Don't we deal with that in here?
I'm reading the definition
Oh.
and I'm wondering if those two terms need to be included or are they already covered?
Oh, as definitions? You mean?
In the definition online of the new one, on line 52,
Right, I read that.
Um,
it says examples include but are not limited to.
Right. And so where it says, but not limited to, I mean, the intent is not to create an exhaustive list of everything that could be an accessory structure. If we were to do that, then this definition could get quite long.
Except I regularly see those two things.
And we can include those, but I mean, the way it's written would encompass that.
I see more of
It's
those
up to
than
the
I see
preference.
of greenhouses.
I like it the way it is myself. Although I wonder about
Storage containers.
swimming pools in the front yard. I mean, maybe it's okay. I've just heard people complain about it, but
They had to follow the code and have the fencing and all that other stuff.
Swimming
I guess
pools
that's
would
what
not
Cape
be
Viking would
governed by
check, is the
this
fencing.
Swimming
ordinance.
pools are not governed by
Swimming pools
this.
wouldn't be
I know.
governed by this, so.
Sorry?
Swimming pools would not be governed by this ordinance, so.
Right.
Would anyone object if I included containers? As
What?
in, what do you call those containers?
Those connexes from
Connex,
the
yeah.
train things.
You want to allow them?
I,
You want to allow? Is that what you're saying?
What are you saying?
if they're not defined, because I'm seeing them start to pop up in different neighborhoods.
Oh, they're everywhere.
And
We didn't used to allow them at all. They weren't an allowed use.
I don't know if that's a separate issue, but
Uh, Um,
they can be done nicely. I know
Yes.
there's one in my neighborhood that's done very nicely, but it's stuccoed. I've seen others that are rusty, bright colors. Just there.
right, so
So,
if we adopt this way, they won't be allowed.
but I would suggest not including it in the definition of accessory structures. We do have, under the general requirements, we do mention shipping containers as prohibited uses.
There's the word. As a
Okay.
prohibited use?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed that. Where is it mentioned?
Prohibited uses.
So, I mean,
Lines.
they're prohibited unless they're modified to meet the, building
Which is
code and
exactly
design
what it should be.
requirements of this. section.
If I may, Madam Chair, line 115. So it's C, paragraph 3, prohibited uses.
115?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so that question's done. That we talked about. We're still waiting for consensus on design standards. And while I'm waiting, I do have another question that's in here on line relationship to zone standards, which is line 95, and it's under section B, applicability. In our sign ordinance, you know, that other question I had about signs and that similar language was under applicability. Are we going to have a similar problem here that we will have to fix later down the road? I just wanted to, do you know what I'm talking about, Riker?
Yeah, so I understand your concern there. No, this is, the way this is written is it's directly compared to the underlying zone and this section controls.
Yeah.
And so this would be a different situation. We wouldn't run into that same problem.
Those were all of my comments.
So what if we summarized what changes we want?
I'm sure Riker's.
Do you want me to go through the notes
Yes.
that I have
That'd
thus
be
far?
great.
So
He's-
on line 148, that we just are going to get confirmation from or comment from the fire district on the 6-foot separation requirement. On line 150, it was requested for a carve out for potentially stricter design standards for those structures that are in front of the main building. Under line 175, the design standards, I haven't heard what the decision is, but I'm assuming it's revert language to A and C from the previous draft.
We got three.
Is that what?
Like it.
3 nods.
Okay.
Kent is still.
I don't know where you're at. What, line 155?
175
Which,
This
what-
one that we.
what-
in,
have
in
to-
the current draft.
166.
175.
Okay.
175.
On the
Oh, I'm looking at the old one because that's where it's coming from. Okay.
I did find the dangling and that is on line 185.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I
okay.
made note to correct that.
185.
And then the other item was to provide a carve out for barns or agricultural uses.
And how would that be verified?
So what do you mean? Like as far as what?
Somebody comes in and they want to build a much bigger building than the one that they would normally be allowed. And they say, well, this is because I'm going to keep my chickens in there or something. I mean,
So,
how would you?
so we would verify that at the time they submitted for their building permit. So every building permit's going to go through, goes through a zoning review by the zoning administrator. And so at that time it would be reviewed. And so
Okay.
they would compare it against
So if
this
there's little
ordinance.
egg doors on the outside, you can just say, this is not what you said it was going to
There's a couple
be.
of bedrooms and a bathroom.
And yeah, so we would, as the application comes in, we would verify it according to the plans and then according to the site visit at the time of C of O. So
Great.
And can we just verify that we're all okay with the current language on E, commercial zone and highway resort zone?
Where are we?
187 E, commercial zone and highway resort zone on the current version. Do we currently have development standards in our agricultural and open space zones that are development standards?
not currently, no.
So what does this say?
This would defer to the zone. So in the event that those standards were placed in that zone, then they would control.
And without?
Well, the intent was to not be as restrictive in the agricultural zone as we are in the residential and the commercial zone. And so they would, I mean, they still have to comply with the standards that globally apply as far as throughout the whole town with building standards and things like that.
Would you recommend developing standards?
So as a separate issue, I do know that the agricultural zone needs to be looked at. And that's when I would suggest assessing that. As far as specific standards to accessory structures, I would not recommend any at this time in this ordinance.
All right.
For the same reasons that I want to change the open space zone as it sits right now, I would love for there to be some basic limits to building, building height and, okay, so the housing bill passes. The BLM office comes and tells us that they're going to contract out some affordable housing apartments in the BLM land in Virgin. And if there are no limits here in open space, which is where all the BLM land is, then they could build a 60-foot high building, right?
So this specifically applies to accessory structures. It does not apply to dwellings.
Oh, okay.
So
I
that would
guess I'm
not
saying-
control.
I want development standards in that chapter, not,
Correct. Yeah. So again, as a separate item, I do think
Yes.
that each of not just the agricultural zone, but each of the zones,
yes.
just as we're considering with the commercial zone, need to
Add
be
it to your list.
reviewed and potentially modernized. And then at that time, we could identify areas where additional items need to be added or altered or what have you there.
Okay. Even if there's just some basic limits, I think
Zones to
we'd be in better shape.
Yeah, yeah. No, I concur that
Okay.
there should be at least a review of that zone, so
And sorry that I've
of all those zones. So.
departed from this ordinance discussion to say that. Anyway. Okay.
Just want to check something. So in both of the residential zones, that structure, the use, agricultural uses are limited in
Mhm.
residential. I'm just double checking.
I think I'm good with those changes.
Okay. All right, Director.
Thank
you.
Real quick, is the commission content with the requirements imposed on commercial for building size? The 50% and the 15%?
That was from the original document, if I recall, or did we? change
No,
it?
that was added as a revision in this document. Previously, there was not a requirement there, if I remember correctly. Oh no, so in the previous document, there was a hard cap
That's right.
of the 3,600 square feet. The direction given was to provide alternate options. The alternate option that's been provided here is similar in structure to what is done in the residential zones, where it's bound by a main building, subordinate to a main building, and then also bound by the size of the lot.
I'm concerned because we don't have good standards yet in the commercial zone. And once we do, then this would work fine. But I think we're going to have to deal with building size in the commercial zone at some point. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with this until then, but I'll just have to live with it. On the new one?
you. For the new one, it starts on 187. The old one, I was just reading that.
Moved on.
The old one was 186. So it sounds like we've got the three zones to work on, right? The commercial
The commercial is, would also
And
be
open
hybrid
s-
resort.
and then
Agricultural.
agriculture and open space.
And open
So it
space.
seems to me like commercial should come first. Maybe not.
And the separate amendments, so I've discussed some of those with Darlene, and we have on the ever-growing list of ordinance amendments, some of those items, well, most of those items are now on that list, so.
I'm just trying to imagine why a commercial entity would need, if the size of a commercial building is capped, correct? 3,000?
Oh, I can see it. I mean, a lot of businesses start out smaller and then once they make some money and
But that would be part of the business, not an accessory structure.
well, but they could move part of their business into the accessory structure.
Then
So
they-
if I'm doing something simple, right? So right now I rent e-bikes to everybody. Well, I start making some money and now I want to be able to sell them gear to go with it. And I can't fit it in my showroom. I could build another building and I could have the gear over in that one. So it'd be my business, but I need something else someplace to show it. So I can see where a business might need to grow
Yeah.
in their lot.
Well, I mean, or you have a retail store and you have a warehouse and
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it,
So I feel like there's a reason for it and I feel comfortable as long as we design it so that it works for everybody.
mhm.
Okay, so for what we're doing today, we all feel good about, except for those exceptions. And I think the hard part with the commercial part of it is since we don't really know, it feels good, but
So
Sure, we could do that.
FYI, 15% of 6 acres, which is the average commercial lot here, is 38,700 square feet.
but it also has to
The
fit,
size of a grocery store.
right, but it also has to fit with the setbacks, it has to fit. If the lot has washes through it, they're not going to be able to bulldoze the washes. So it's, it's going to be a little bit self-limiting. Is that fair, Riker? Or am I just?
And there are other things to consider with commercial properties, with commercial businesses. There are parking requirements. There are certain things that they are required to install and build and develop outside of just the structure itself. In addition to that, any structure being built on a commercial parcel would need to comply with that commercial property site plan, given the new ordinance that we've adopted. So any change in that, if an accessory structure was not previously designated on the site plan, then the site plan would need to be amended.
Do you feel those parameters fit the vision that we're about to adopt of a rural community,
Are you referring to,
commercial?
so
I can see the agricultural easily. fitting there.
I do think that it would fit with that, but what I would advise the commission is to base these requirements off of what is an existing code, because there's no guarantee that any proposed amendment passes. And so my advice to the commission would be to consider it against existing code. However, I will say that I do think that it fits the requirements that are included in that draft, but it is still in the drafting phase, hasn't been presented for public hearing.
Yes,
So
what hasn't been presented? This,
the commercial zone. So
All
that's,
right. Are we going to discuss the open space?
yes,
Tonight?
that's under the third item.
Oh,
And we got a directive from town council on 2 items.
I just wanted to clarify. So are we good with the direction that's been given so far on accessory structures? And I'll make those changes.
I think
and
the
get them back to
consensus
the
is
commission.
yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
Riker, did you want to recap the 2 items council is shooting our way?
Yes, so there were 2 items that were sent to the commission. One of those items was the open space ordinance. Recently, the council adopted an open space ordinance. The commission has expressed some concerns with the language that was adopted. And that was presented to the council at their work meeting, and they directed the commission to consider a revision to that language. Yeah, so that's been sent
then
to
the
the commission
grading
to develop. And then additionally, there is currently, with our new grading ordinance, we've created a kind of circular loop in the grading ordinance. We require a grading ordinance for any cutting or filling. And we require that a grading ordinance be subject to or be acquired after a building permit. But in order to obtain a building permit, you have to do exploratory geotech studies. You cannot do a geotech study or soils report without digging, cutting, and filling. And so we've created kind of a circular item there. The intent behind this amendment was to remedy that. And so there was some draft language provided to the council. They expressed some of their concerns with that language. And that language, I anticipate that that'll come before the commission next month.
so hearing next.
For discussion, yes. And then I anticipate that there will be further discussion on the language and what potential changes you would like
So-
to see.
Before it goes to hearing.
Correct.
Okay.
Before it goes to hearing?
So I guess that's a matter of preference for the
Because
commission. Would you
it is
prefer
a
it?
standing ordinance, and this is just an amendment to something we passed. If we had that discussion, then it would be okay to vote on that
Right.
item.
If we
So,
weighed in on it before the final draft. went to
so,
yours.
so as a matter of preference, if the commission would prefer that the item be brought in a work meeting for direction to be given and discussion to be had, then it could be after that go to a public hearing and potential vote, as opposed to going to a hearing. So our current process has been to introduce an item at a hearing and then take it to the work meeting, receive direction, and
If
then.
it- Yeah, if
vote.
it's a new item,
Mhm.
that is accurate. But if it is an item like, I don't know, the CUP for Rocky Mountain Power, there was a sense of urgency on that and the open space thing. So since we already had passed the open space, we had that hearing discussion. We could discuss it after. Riker already knows I have a concern,
So
as does some of the council members.
is, if the commission would like, I can respond or revise the proposed language in response to the comments made by the council, and then present that at the next regular meeting for public hearing. If the commission deems that language is appropriate, they could make a recommendation. If not, then they could postpone that and discuss it further.
The sooner the better, actually.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So can we do that?
Mhm.
that'd be great. Thank you.
yeah.
And an open space is kind of in a similar situation. We've
Yep.
already had
And we can-
several robust discussions on it.
And so we could follow the same process with
Do
that.
you understand
Right.
the difference?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
So I have the proposed language
It's our
and
intent to, not to slow things down, but to do things intentionally,
yeah, no, I think that would be a wise approach. So
That'd be great.
So with that in mind, Lee, do you want to refresh our memories as to this?
Okay, I
don't know if we'll
I
be able
don't
to-
have the versions actually in front of me, the current version in front of me, but I will say that the most recent amendment we made to the open space zone, because we've made 3 or 4 over the last few months, or year. The most recent one exempted federal, public lands, I think in general, federal, state, whatever, government lands from the terms of the zone. And because sometimes BLM land gets used, there's a bill that passes saying, let's get some of this thing taken care of on some of our BLM land. Well, it could be, big apartment buildings. It could be data centers. It could be detention facilities. It could be mining. It could be all sorts of things that might not work well on the BLM land within our boundaries. Sometimes when they do pass a bill, the Congress will say that do this, but stay within the limits of the local law on safety or zoning or whatever. It might say that right in there. If we've exempted them, we don't get that
That makes tons of sense.
consideration. We have no place to negotiate from.
Yeah.
So on your proposed ordinance, can you explain, because it's the applicability section that we're
Yeah.
concerned about?
Have it here.
So
Here it is. Okay. So I don't have the original language, but this is a markup. So if you look at it, you'll see that it used to say the use standards, conditional use requirements, and prohibited use provisions of this chapter shall not apply to lands, blah, 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 blah. Well, I left something out there that probably should have been struck through. But anyway, and the suggestion is to just say that we recognize that the town may not always have the power to enforce all of its laws on lands owned by the federal government or state or other agency. And this says that if that happens, if some of the provisions of our ordinance are preempted, the provisions of this code will be enforced specifically and exclusively to the extent legally allowed. So that opens up the negotiation to what is legally allowed, what are we legally allowed to enforce? And Riker may want to make changes to the language, but you understand the idea?
Yeah.
I
no,
hope-
that makes
I have
sense.
the draft.
What do you think of that language?
So I think we may wordsmith it a little bit, but from what I understand, the intent is that where is only to allow that exemption where state law or state code calls for it. So only in those situations, as opposed to globally and in every situation, it's only where it preempts. Am I correct in that?
Yes, only where something above us is preempting
Mhm.
our enforcement.
Can't we just say no and then they have to fight us for it? I mean.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I mean,
I mean,
I think
You tell- I
that's
mean, you tell
the-
me, I don't know if
the-
you can or
the-
not.
Yeah.
so a municipality has, this is would be a legislative decision.
Right.
The town could make that decision. However,
Yeah.
you would want to avoid creating a situation where you are conflicting with or becoming combative toward state code or federal regulations, as that could open more gaps
Okay.
than maybe are currently perceived with what is in there now.
Okay, thank you.
And so,
When you create a wall for them to knock down, it
It's-
is more,
They might knock
it
down
creates more
the wall.
problems.
Gotcha.
and some of the things we're including in our prohibited use, when we get that back from review, will also address some of the concerns
That's true.
that people have.
Right, not if we exempt them, but
But
yes.
so we want language that if we have it, they've got to, we
They've
got to
gotta
have a discussion,
Work with it.
yeah.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah, so-
doable?
Yeah, so we'll take this language and I'll draft an ordinance that incorporates the intent here. If not the language itself, then at least the intent, and then we'll coordinate Lee and make sure that we're addressing that accordingly so that it's ready for presentation to the commission and then
Great.
get full feedback.
Kent, do you have any thoughts?
No.
No, okay. So as I see it, from my understanding, we're going to have, do we have an updated proposed list of items for public hearing in September since we talked?
No, I mean, it'll be fairly close to what we discussed in our,
But we'll
Mm,
also have
last week.
2 more.
correct, yes.
I've got the amendment to the grading, but the open space amendment,
hmm
subdivision still on.
That one's up in the air still,
Okay.
but the commercial zone.
Commercials and the CUP. One,
CUP may be ready.
maybe, okay. But
For
that's
sure, commercial, but,
commercial grading,
and open space for
open
sure.
space. Okay,
Speaking of,
with the possibility of a vote, excuse me, I just wanted to finish the thought. With the possibility of a vote on grading and open space. Right?
Yes. Mhm.
And then I have grading amendment, maybe the sign, if that's done. For a regular meeting, zone and text amendment. You can vote on that, right?
Mhm.
Grading, open space, and maybe okay.
did you say
Thank you.
Zoom and text? Oh, zoning and text.
The one we just talked
Okay.
about.
I just wanted to say that after reading the decision on the appealed CUP, I think there's some changes that are suggested, things that might have not been overturned if we considered putting some of them in the ordinance.
Yeah, and I'm not super familiar with exactly which of those requirements you may be referring to.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head, at least.
That's okay.
But yes, as we go through and resolve it and revise both uses and how the conditional use permit process is handled, it is always cleaner to have requirements in the code for uses or standards for uses.
Yes.
Conditional use permits are and this may be outside the current discussion, but conditional use permits are the climate towards those uses and how municipalities are using them. A lot of municipalities are transitioning more and more away from conditional use permits and more towards permitted uses with standards in code.
Right.
Because a lot of the things that could be mitigated by conditions in a conditional use are things that can be anticipated by communities. And so a lot of communities are simply placing those standards in their code. That doesn't necessarily work for all uses.
Right.
But, and that's
You
up
need
to the-
standards before you stop that whole process.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. You would want to impose those standards in your code or adopt those standards. And so, but again, that's a policy decision for the town, as to whether or not they'd like to adjust how they do that.
I think that anytime that we can agree on adding some standards for a use to the ordinance. that
That's
we should
clarity for
do it.
everyone.
Yes. But
Yeah.
anyway, and I have a few.
Shortens
of
time.
those.
So if there are no other comments or items for discussion, Riker, did we cover everything on your list?
Yes, we did.
Mark, we have nothing more from you. It's nice to see you tonight.
Myself.
With that, I don't even think I need a motion to adjourn the meeting, a work meeting.
don't think
This
so.
meeting is adjourned at 6:50.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.